Trustee Guzman? You're there.
I am here, and no, I do not have any questions. I am grateful that it is large because it is an on-board document. I wasn't able to pull it up, so thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate your understanding. And yes, Trustee Williams.
May I just make a clarification that this is not part of PCG's requirement, by the way. I would like to make that note for the record. Remember when they came on to the board, that was a specific question I asked, like, hey, will you give us periodic check-ins just so that we know where you're at in the process with it? And that's not required. They're actually providing this for us out of the kindness of their own heart to do that. I would just like that on the record so that everybody knows it's not like we're hiding public information. This information is just there because they wanted to. The report in June is the only thing that is supposed to be public.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Williams. Yep, I'm grateful for your recommendation because as a result of that, we have received these updates from PCG on a regular basis. Our next major update will be when they provide us a report in June. Looking forward to those findings. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who's participated in these these interviews and the focus groups. It is quite the feat and the adventure that we are on. All right, colleagues, if there are no more questions related to this item, we're going to move forward with 2.02, the board committee updates. This item, if you remember, colleagues, is a continuation of a discussion that we had back in April, about 4 weeks ago, when I left you with several questions to consider regarding the board committee structure. So at this time, I'm actually going to ask us to pull up the second item, the link. Yep. Colleagues, if you remember, I'm pulling up this information. I'm pulling up the board committee. Thank you. Yes, board committee slide. If you could go to the second slide, please. These are the reflective questions that I left you with last month. I'd like for you to take a moment to review them and then share if you have any reflections since the last time we met in April, when I presented these details for you back in April. Is there any discussion at this point? Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I know that I've only served on a few committees so far, maybe 3 meetings, so I'm not sure if I'm well equipped to provide such a robust conversation on this topic. In just the 3 that I have participated in, the structure has been well done. I do think in some of the committees, though, the training, like I mentioned to you on one of the committee would have been much more helpful to prepare. But I know this is committee work and not necessarily our work. But that's all I could offer at the moment.
Okay. Thank you for that insight. Definitely, there's a room for us to support additional onboarding training for members as they come into committees, right? Thank you for that, and I think that's fair across all committees. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. I was just going to echo Trustee Adams, because when we did come on the board, you and I at the same time, it was just like, here are the committees, and we don't know what they're doing, and they're just like, your name to this committee. We're like, okay, sounds good. It would have been helpful to have that training. I know that now that we have that time we've sat on these committees, we know a little bit more about what they do. But learning about what the committees do while sitting on the committee is not necessarily the most ideal place to learn. So,
thank you for that. That's great. I appreciate that feedback and insight to help us build out training and additional information for colleagues who are currently on the board and future board members. Trustee Brooks?
Trustee Cavazos.
Trustee Cavazos?
Sure. I'm kind of going through the reflective questions. And so just to use one as an example, the very first one, which is this committee structure working as intended? And I think that we all now here on the board with the training understand which committees are board appointed, which are on a little bit different structure where when a new president takes over, the new president asks the board members, like, what are we interested in? What would we like to be on? Would, et cetera, something in that vein. And so I don't know if the public understands where we say, is this committee structure working as intended? It's kind of like a very vague, very general. So which committee structure are we talking about? Do we have the needed expertise within these groups? Are we talking about bond oversight, AZAC committee? Are we talking about something where somebody is just appointed, like the school naming committee, which I used to be on, which Trustee Bustamante Adams is on now. So all of these questions, I think, are very, very relevant questions. But I think that when we get down to the bottom one, that is key. Is there an opportunity to streamline this work and build board community cohesion? I think to be able to reach that goal, I think that we need to have the preceding three very much clarified so that everybody knows what we're talking about and which committees. Just a suggestion from my perspective.
Do you have a very specific idea to help streamline, for example, the attracting, for example, qualified people to serve on committees?
The first thing that comes to my mind, President, is possibly like looking at the existing applications that we have. Are there commonalities on the applications, where it's asked you maybe about relevant experience? I think that some of them have that, some of them don't. Before on our agendas, they used to be separate items, not under the consent agenda. And so they would be something to where, that maybe the person nominating, perhaps maybe you're nominating a person that you're able to say something, the person's able to speak, and now it's usually in the consent agenda. So I think that since we now have that structure, that possibly streamlining the application would be like looking at our applications, are there some commonalities that we want to see present on all such committee members? And are there some where historical knowledge and actual, shall we say, community expertise, professional expertise is much more relevant? I don't know, just kind of, that's the first thing that popped
Great
into my head.
suggestions. Thank you for that. Yes. Trustee Brooks, did you have something to add? Yeah.
I definitely agree on the comment that some committee members need more training. I would be open to also looking at committee bylaws to ensure that they're actually aligned to governance practices, because they do occasionally amend they do occasionally adjust their own bylaws. I agree with Trustee Cavazos about board appointments. Both points. I do think that a single application where anybody in the community can apply, and then staff compiles all the applications and then has the board member make a recommendation. I think that would help with some of the vacancy issues that we have. I also think that board appointments, anytime they come before the board, because the full board has to vote on it, should appear outside of the consent. And we also should include all applicants on competitive appointments. So not making an assumption, if the board's tasked with making the appointment, then they need to have all of the relevant information.
Okay. I hear you echoing some of the sentiments of our colleagues regarding training, reviewing bylaws, ensuring they are parallel to policy, and then streamlining recommendations, echoing the recommendations of Trustee Cavazos, streamlining the application process for committees, along with ensuring that as procedurally for the board that we receive committee applications, or that we're able to select committee members for external committees, for committees of the board, in some sort of work session where we, outside of consent. Okay, got it. Thank you. Colleagues, is there any other discussion around this item?
I have a couple of things I wanted to add, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely, Trustee Guzman.
Thank you. I was looking at these reflective questions, and I was thinking to myself, how do we make it better? And it's not just the qualified people who want to serve. It's also ensuring that as a board, we understand the structure. So if we're making a recommendation, that we follow through with that recommendation when we come before the board. I just think when we're looking at these, we should make sure that we're streamlining. And maybe someone has already said that, but I feel like if there is something that happens in the committee, it needs to be streamlined and follow it all the way through. If you make a decision in one committee, for example, and I'm just saying in like the school naming committee, if you vote to go a certain way in the school naming committee and you sit on the committee as a board member, you should vote the same way when you come to the board. I just feel like we need to look at the policies for these boards and at these committees and make sure that we have that kind of alignment.
Great. I thank you for that. I think that last word is a beautiful summary. Alignment exists on the board policies and protocols. Colleagues, if there are no other, there's no other discussion at this time, I'm going to make I hear all of, Trustee Zamora? Yes, please.
I wanted to also add maybe a suggestion
Yeah.
as we talk about the idea of doing one application for all. Also possibly having something on the website I would like to see where folks can also be informed of the type of committees we have, and maybe even I'm blanking on the word, but on like their time's up kind of.
Oh, term.
Yes, when terms are up and all that. So I think that would be great for folks who would be interested in something can also have like a timeline of things.
That's great. So we should utilize our existing resource on our website to share that these committees exist. Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Yes, Trustee Brooks?
One more I forgot is committees should come to the full board, and when they are there, the board, like the chair of that committee, should actually be presenting with staff.
I didn't hear the last part, I'm sorry.
The chair should be presenting with staff. If the chair is not a board member, that would be awkward for board members. But community committees they have a community member chairing it. Typically in the past, that person actually sat with staff.
That's something that we can address. Thank you, Trustee Brooks. That's something we can address in the protocols when it comes to the way that we decide as a group and how committees should come before the board. Okay. Trustee Zamora?
Sorry. And I always have the questions just to be
please.
clear on things. Is there a way that we can also like ensure that we get a diverse group of folks participating in committees? Is that a thing we can possibly do as well? Like a checkbox? I don't want to call it a checkbox, but just some type of requirements to make sure that we have different voices participating.
I think that there may be some, we can definitely offer to the point around some sort of a consistent application that helps us identify what we're looking for in terms of skills. And I don't know that we can select exclusively on background, or if that will be a like background ethnicity. But I don't know. That's where my head went.
No, that's exactly where I'm going.
Okay.
Make them have backgrounds.
Yeah, no. I don't. Do we currently? That's something to look into. I can definitely look into what we currently have, and then see if there are any liabilities for us, including the like some specific demographic information. That would be my only concern in terms of a risk, but I see the value and the benefit of having diversity and diverse voices at the table. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. And I wanted to echo what Trustee Zamora said, not like a checkbox, but kind of maybe more like where we're looking generally, making sure that that if we are having a really good application out there, we're probably going to get a wide diversity of people that are applying for it. So it wouldn't be just like we specifically have to have a checkbox, but that we are making it well known on the website and maybe through some of the things that our district communications puts out. And the other thing I wanted to ask is I'm still a little bit kind of puzzled on the reference materials. I thought that we needed, now with these, I know that these are from previously, it's a continuation as you had explained to me. So as I'm reflecting on the reflective questions for the May work session, are we going to have something a little bit more specific so that the Board of Trustees, that we are, that we are really well prepared to make these changes? I'll give you an example. If you look at number 2, that one really interests me, is our existing committee structure based on good governance practices. So if we don't think that we are, we need, or that they are, we need to be prepared to be able to cite, which policy we think that does not align with. But to me right now, I don't know if this is just the old teacher or therapist or whatever with the OCD structure, but I'm looking for more specificity, can you say it, more specifics on this, because there's a lot of general implications within this. And I'd like this to be something that can be like a very constructive conversation, so that it doesn't go on forever, that we are able to go like, look at this, look at this, look at this. This is where we need to improve. We're good on this, and go on. But this right here on the reflective questions, I think that we need to make them a little bit more specific. That's just a suggestion.
Perfect. Are you hoping to work with me to get those?
I would be happy to.
Great. Okay, well then, sounds like we have a winner. Signed up. Perfect. Great. Well, thank you, colleagues. It looks like that's the end of the discussion. If there's nothing else on the cloud, I'll work with Trustee Cavazos to strengthen this piece so that we can come back to the June work session with more information for you to reflect on the reflections. Thank you. Okay. Great. Moving on to 2.03. Consultant for the goal setting and board superintendent evaluation. All right, colleagues, this is we're now in May, but last month the officers met to discuss this item specifically. It's part of the beginning of the discussions that we wanted to map out and plan and prepare for an upcoming discussion with all of you. It is in the bylaws, the policy that it is under my authority to select someone to help us with training, facilitation, evaluation. And so I'm coming to you with my hopes and goals, and hoping to seek a discussion that will help us move forward. Okay. So we know that we have to, one of our essential components of our role as members of as a board is to conduct the superintendent's evaluation. And one of the things that I've learned since serving, for the last 2 years, and now as president for the last 4 months, is that we have an opportunity to align SC 1.1 with our practices and policies. Policy SC 1.1 was updated late last year at last board. SC 1.1 provides us very specific parameters about the timeline for the superintendent's evaluation. We really need to close again the gaps between the practices and the policy. And in order for us to do that, we need to identify goals that we can measure the superintendent. And in order for us to develop those goals, we have to really take the time this summer before the summer actually, start the work now so that by the start of the school year, we can, with the support and the help of the community, we have very clear goals that allow us to measure success in preparation for the end of next school year. Right? Lots of years and school years in there. So that is part of that is, this process is really too important not to get wrong. And I really would appreciate we're on 2.03, right? Yeah, okay. My notes are mixed up. I would really appreciate the opportunity to work with a facilitator who can help us, who can help me ensure that I can also contribute to this process. And really, at the end of the day, we have worked with various trainers in this board, this existing board, and then the board before I came on board has worked with various trainers to help us with this particular process. But I want to share with you that I have been in touch with AJ Carville. AJ, with the Council of Great City Schools. He works at the Council of Great City Schools to support school districts who are part of the council to ensure that they're focused on student outcomes. And while we have adopted goals in last year, for example, and the year before that, they have been input-based. They have not been specifically student outcomes-based. And again, we have a really unique opportunity right now to plan and prepare for this particular moment and ensure that we are able to capture this information right and start the new board and the future boards, on the right path. So AJ has shared that he and his team who work with school districts across the country are pretty slammed when it comes to their schedule. This work is in high demand right now. I think it always has been, but there's a special emphasis on ensuring that school boards are focused on the right things, students' outcomes being one of those right things. And what he'll do in preparation for this work is that he's going to meet one-on-one with each of you, or his team members. So we'll meet one-on-one individually with you. One of the things that I've learned very quickly is that there has to be an appetite of the board to focus on student outcomes in order for this work to be successful. And what that looks like is that he'll conduct one-on-one meetings with everyone over the phone or via Google Meet based on your comfort level. He then will turn around and will develop a report that will be an anonymous report on his findings. And he says that it's important for, if the council is going to come in and support this type of work, we want to make sure that there is unity in student outcomes, right? That there is a desire for the group to move forward and really commit to this work. This is it's an investment of our time and an investment of their time as well. So those are some things that I've discussed with AJ, and I want to let you know that I've selected him as our facilitator, and I will be having you meet with him to discuss he'll have specific questions that he'll ask everyone, and again, in June will provide us, or hopefully before June, will provide us a report with his findings that will allow us to determine whether we are focused on we are truly committed to student outcomes, and he'll provide recommendations through this report. And again, that will help us determine whether that is the path that we choose to go on. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I was taking notes while you were talking. So you said that you had been talking to Mr. Crabbill, and I am acquainted with who Mr. Crabbill is, and I have sat in on some of his presentations and seminars in the past. Were there any other consultants that were considered or were in the competition for this position?
Were there other consultants?
That you consider? You said that you had selected Mr. Crabbill, you had talked to him, and you do have, that discretion. So I'm just wondering, kind of like as Trustee Brooks was talking earlier on the committees, we were talking about bringing, all, competitive, candidates, were there other consultants, but that I guess what I'm asking is, what does Mr. Crabbill have to offer us that is different from other consultants? And I have some other questions, but I don't want to take up all the time. I want to be able to have my colleagues. I thought I would start with that one.
Great. One, I've provided the book, or thank you.
Trustee Brooks.
The district has purchased books for every board member, great on their behalf. It is AJ's newest book. And in his book, he talks about the importance of student-specific outcomes and decisions that are grounded in things that are going to be good for students. And he has a tremendous amount of experience. If you're familiar with him, so you also know that he at one point served as a school board member. He has worked for the Texas Education Agency. He has a wealth of experience working with school boards and helping them move towards a student-focused, student outcomes lens. And that work is so important. I mean, you've attended the council's trainings in the past. You've seen him speak. Those of us who've had the privilege of hearing him speak know that he's pretty committed to this work and has trained a tremendous amount of people who serve on school boards to also get them aligned towards student outcomes.
Thank you for that. I couldn't find anything, and you're correct, I have sat in on this, and I think that I think Superintendent John could probably help me out here. I think the first time that we met, Mr. Crabbill was at Harvard Business School for that. That was before some of us were on the board. I couldn't find anything about his educational background. Can you help me out with that? Because I assume that in talking with them, I do know that I think it was at Kansas City that he was on the school board. I think he served as a conservator and the receivership somewhere in Texas. I'm not sure on that, so I'm not going to pretend to know that. So I guess I would like to know about his educational background and what are his fees, what would he cost us, and what would be the timeline on this goal setting, et cetera, the whole process.
Well, I don't have his bio in front of us. His bio is in the book and online. And if you, once you have a meeting with him, you're more than welcome to ask him the specific questions about his background. I'm confident that he will answer them for you if you have very specific questions. Now, when it comes to our timeline, we're on a pretty tight timeline as a group. As I shared with you earlier, the evaluation, our goals, and engaging our community is going to take time. So we need to get to work on this project as soon as possible.
Okay, and so I will go ahead and continue trying to find the educational background, because I looked on Wikipedia, I looked on LinkedIn, I looked on number, and I found, where of course he has graduated from high school. I hadn't attended university, but I didn't see any college degrees there. I did see his extensive experience on school boards, as you had mentioned, and then that he had worked in receivership in Texas, but I don't recall the name, so I apologize for that. But are we able to answer at least what would his fees be? I will look for the educational background myself.
He'll be able to determine that once he provides us recommendations on whether we choose to move forward with them.
Okay, so we don't have a range or like this to this or anything. We don't have any idea.
The work that we've done with the council is pretty affordable, and it is in comparison to private trainers that we've had in the past. So the council does that for a reason, because they know that school districts are strapped with resources. So
Okay.
once we have, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I'd just like to make the clarifications and maybe hopefully jog some memories back in, I want to say it was March, maybe it was February when we first had this initial conversation. This isn't to you, this is just for the good of the group. I'm just looking at you because you're looking at me. So I know we spoke about this. We actually, as a board, decided to have the officers go and find a consultant. We've all met AJ. He's nice. He's very no nonsense. He's very straight to the point. So if I'm understanding correctly, because maybe it didn't come across correctly, he is doing the introductory calls free of charge,
Mhm.
so that he can evaluate if he would like to work with us. That's right?
Mhm.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew here, you didn't, that as the president, you didn't just approve somebody to come work with us. That's still at that point, because we're gonna end up paying for whoever we do, that will always come back to the board of us seven.
Yeah.
Correct.
It is, unless the amount is significant that it's,
Sure.
Yeah.
That was already assigned to the officers to do. I realize, I just want to make sure that's
Thank
on
you.
the record,
yes.
because we all know how people are, so.
Thank you, Trustee Williams.
Thank you.
Mhm. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I am just curious. So this is not a voting thing. This is just you're informing us that this is the direction you want to go with the evaluation. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Okay. Then that's interesting and okay. I am just going to I'll just wait and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. I want to make a point of clarity. You did say evaluation, but more broadly, this is about our goals and our engagement with the community regarding our priorities and our goals, which will help us lead to our evaluation. Thank you. Trustee
Okay,
Zamora.
thank you.
Trustee Zamora and then Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Right now that you mentioned the goals, is this going to be different than the Focus 2024 plan that we're working on?
You know, we have discussed, we have not, that's a really good point, and something that we actually need to reevaluate. We've discussed reevaluating it because we are coming up on that space. But we're kind of,
That's next year.
yes, already. We have some competing priorities when it comes to determining goals that will help us measure in preparation for the end of next school year, which will help us lead to an evaluation of the superintendent, at the same time refreshing the Focus 2024. Is that fair? Yeah, it's great. So we do need to refresh it, but it may happen parallel. And a consultant, potentially AJ, could give us guidance to help move in that direction. Is that fair? Yes, Superintendent Jara.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Trustee Zamora, great question. I think one of the things that we need to look at, obviously separate from Trustee Garcia Morales, is right on the evaluation for next year for immediate. At the same time, we also have to, as we come out of COVID, baseline our student achievement for the next 4 years. So we do have to refresh Focus 2024 with the community input. So we have to start the whole process within the next, I would say, 9 months, right? So we do have competing priorities. So I think this is the perfect timing, because then we have to then go from 2024 to 26 or whatever the board decides. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Dr. Jara. Yeah. Thank you. Do you have other
I
questions?
do.
Please,
Because
yes.
now that we talk about timeline and time corrections, time sensitive, do we have a timeline of when these calls are going to be done, like the initiative? And I only think because I know I missed the climate study update, and I know that was supposed to be finalized in June as well, because I think of it at the end of the session as well. How can we use that information as well to have these conversations with AJ? So if it's something, like what are you envisioning for the timeline?
That's a great recommendation, a great idea. That can tell you that when it comes to the introductory calls, the temperature checks that AJ is gonna have with us, they are preliminary, just to see our appetite as a unit to move forward on student outcomes. He has shared that the most successful boards who do choose to do this work and follow the recommendations take about 2 years of training and support and ongoing coaching and guidance. And so, there's absolutely there's no doubt in my mind that there may be some consistencies there that we can help address through broadly, both without really knowing what's coming from the report from PCG, and also not really knowing at this time what AJ may recommend for us, but we can see what themes exist and if there's overlap. Yeah,
Perfect.
great. Anything else? Yes, please.
That'll be that. So I actually did have a chance to hear him speak at the Council of Great City Schools at the beginning of this year. And one of the things that kind of caught my attention was he did talk about coming in, helping school boards and, be successful and everything. And there was a specific school board, don't ask me where it was because I don't remember, but they did flag that they've had a lot of issues and, it's just been very difficult for them even to rebuild as a board. And he just seemed kind of like, oh yeah, well maybe the approach needs to be a little bit different. So I guess I just want to mention that if as together we can be like, hey, it's not really starting new. I think he mentioned the word rebuilding, the board and rebuilding with the communities. And if that's kind of not what he's used to, just brand new. And I remember because I even looked at trustee books and I said that's the key word for us. I think that makes us different than the other boards that he was addressing.
Yes. So the focus on rebuilding, right? And it will, a lot of that will be determined by our willingness as a group to say, hey, we want to rebuild together as a unit, as a cohesive unit, to say we are committed to this work and we're committed to our students, more importantly. And what does it look like together to move forward in a direction that will help us rebuild the things that need the most attention. So thank you for that, Trustee Zamora. Appreciate those insights. Any other, Trustee Bustamante Adams?
And I appreciate Trustee Williams for that clarity on the introductory calls, because I think from reading the book, and I'm only on chapter 6, but we have to be ready as a team, and so that'll be a great determination if we are ready. I think that we are, but it's good to know that it'll be a conversation to determine if we are. And then based on Trustee Zamora's question, that time frame, if you've made the decision to choose him as to make the introductory calls, when would those happen? And how much time should we allocate to be prepared?
I will confirm with AJ, and I will send it an email as soon as I send out the the contact list of our board to him/the Council of Great City Schools. My suspicion it will be 35 minutes to 45 minutes phone call, and my aspirational goal is that it will take place in the next 2 weeks. I know scheduling, that's my ideal aspirational thing. I'm ready tomorrow to make a phone call, but I know that our schedules are just, are hectic.
Work on a Saturday and a Sunday, that's great.
That's right. Yes, we will definitely ask them if that is a request.
Yes, I
Trustee
just have
Cavazos?
a brief clarification, Madam President. I just wanted to go back here, it stated here, on where it says for goal setting, and you were clarifying that this was going to involve our community, correct?
Absolutely. Our community has to help us prioritize our goals.
Okay, so when we bring this back and when we are talking about this, can we clarify that, because, if we just have, say, the average person reading that, consultant for goal setting and board and superintendent evaluation, just a way of maybe, again, specificity, stop trying to say that, the goal setting, is this going to be by surveys, community meetings, or how are we going to, what is it looking like to you at this point?
It's really, that's great feedback. And if that's something that there's an appetite from the board to ensure that we collect both in-person and virtual feedback, that we find ways to do that, but that we'll cross that bridge as a group when we get to that work. We have to secure a facilitator first.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. That was something, I thought I heard you say that, but I was taking notes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, I don't hear or see any other comments at this time. Trustee Brooks, did you already share? Oh, do you care to share?
I know that the board has worked with a number of consultants, so I'm glad we're choosing someone different. My feedback that I've gotten from other board members nationally is that it did a lot of good for their board. It did a lot of good for their board. Working with AJ, it's difficult work, so hopefully everyone is willing to put their egos aside and dig in and do the work, because that's really what it's going to take for us to move forward.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Very good. we will keep it moving. Moving on to item 2.04, trustee continuing professional development. So I want to share with you that, again, this is an item that was brought up during the officers meeting. And in the officers meeting, we discussed the parallel and the need for us to not only as a group focus on the goal setting and evaluations of the board and the superintendent, but we also could potentially benefit from, will benefit tremendously from ensuring that we have increased professional development around what effective goals look like, that are outcome specific versus input specific. Did I say that right? Getting those things across, wires crossed. And I want to hear from my colleagues in terms of what other, in preparation for this work, this potentially challenging work that will require us to be united towards student outcomes, what additional training you'd like to receive so that we can be successful as a unit. Love to hear any ideas or recommendations. Again, this is not an action item, and it's mostly it is a discussion about professional development opportunities. I can tell you from my own, I would definitely benefit from ensuring that I know I can help when we're developing the goals and when we prioritize the goals, to be clear that I know the difference between inputs and outputs, so that we are clear when we provide superintendent specific goals and say, this is exactly what we're looking for. There is no question what the outcome is, what our desired outcome is when we have very specific training on the difference between inputs and outputs. So I guess I'll direct my questions to the more seasoned board members on the board. I would say the oldest members, but the more seasoned members of the board. Trustee Cavazos, Trustee Brooks, have you all ever received training on inputs versus outputs? Trustee Cavazos?
I don't think it was called inputs versus outputs. Trustee Brooks was here 8 months before I was, so I would defer to her on that. I do have some answers on some of your other questions. Okay.
Trustee Brooks?
No, the board has not received any training.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's definitely something that we can benefit from. Trustee Cavazos, did you have some?
I will in just a
Oh, okay.
moment.
Still jotting notes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Trustee Guzman, do you have any insight that you'd like to share at this time?
For professional development, I think we do need to have professional development. I think that I think we should look into going to more of the National Association of School Board member professional development. I attended this last year in Orlando, and even though there were a lot of things that were said for much smaller districts of ours, they really had some good stuff on how to grow your own teachers and things like that. That I know that we want to take a look at, and if we want to get the student outcomes that we need, we have to have certified educators in the classroom. So, just looking at it systemically, I know that I learned a lot from that professional development, and I feel like when we're looking at professional development, we should also kind of wait for the end of the legislative session to see what type of professional development they're going to require us to also have. That's just my thought.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Certainly the national conferences that we attend are always inspiring and give us that jolt and opportunity to connect with other colleagues across the country who are doing this work. And, I especially want to hear additional insights that would help us as a unit, training that would help us as a group, work towards building a focus on student outcomes. And that may, as a result, come from potentially maybe something
I feel like in the National Association had a whole They had a whole training just for board members, even how to assist us with our own SEL, our own emotional learning. I feel like it was something that was very positive. I'm very grateful that I went to it because I feel like when I came back, I was a better board member than when I left.
Great. Thank you for that insight. One of the things that I was sharing a second ago was it is possible that as a result of our conversations with AJ, he may recommend additional trainings that we would benefit from as a group too. Trustee Brooks?
That would actually be my preferred approach. I'd also like to wait for the culture piece.
Mm-hmm.
That will probably tell us what might be beneficial to receive training.
Great.
I mean, the climate.
Yeah.
Study.
So PCGs, to wait for PCGs results and reports and potentially recommendations that AJ provides. Great, thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
Yes, thank you, Madam President, for coming back to me. I would echo my colleague's sentiments that I am anxious and very interested in hearing the PCG on the culture and climate reports. I know that they did the surveys, the interviews, everything like that, since I went over on the chart. As far as my own personal experience on here, the first thing that kind of jumped into my mind are things that we have talked about before, and that's that in adhering to our governance policies, there are sometimes some glitches that come up as far as, I'll give you an example, as far as effective communication, effective, consistent, and equitable communication between the board members and the superintendent. Another thing that came up was Trustee Guzman kind of alluded to it right now. I'm kind of coming at it from a different direction, and that would be legislative advocacy, as far as not just coming up with our 2 bill draft requests, but really, really being able to get some training. I know that we're not all in this position of where it's, like every 2 years, but unfortunately that's where we're at right now. And, I think that would be something that would be really important so that we're all on the same page. And the last thing I think that we've been lacking on, and it comes up constantly, and it's one of our major responsibilities as a trustee, and that's fiscal responsibility in regard to everything, not just our budget, but when we get our briefings on contracts, external contracts, purchasing awards, everything. I think that's some fiscal responsibility and really understanding what that entails. Because I would say that even after 5 years here, I was appointed and then ran for election, so I did not receive the same kind of training, although I will say that Mr. Caruso really knocked himself out in 1 week to try to do the fire hose thing, but I didn't have the week of trainings, et cetera, et cetera. So it was like 1 week, 1 week, and Mr. Caruso did an admirable job. But those are 3 things: the effective communication between the board members so that it's equitable, adhering to our policies, legislative advocacy training, and fiscal responsibility training. Because there are so many things that come up in the community where they will say, did you just approve this contract? I will say, yes, we just did. And did you receive a briefing? Yes, we did. And they don't really have that information. So I think it would behoove us, I wanted to use that word, it would behoove us to be able to explain a little bit better that, yes, we adopted that reading program. No, we did not have this other option. This is the option that it looked like was best for student outcomes in our classrooms, for our educators and for our students. So I think all of that kind of ties together. Sorry, didn't mean to go on so long.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Trustee Brooks?
Can I summarize those? Because I actually do support them. I think reviewing how finances are approved and how you're supposed to actually look at finances. I'm surprised to hear that that's not known. So if we feel that that's a weakness, I'm willing to sit through a training even though I don't necessarily feel I need it. I do agree that there should be consistent communication practices and protocols, so that there are clear expectations, and everybody knows what they are. And then I do agree with the legislative part. I probably would say it's more, the need is more like coalition building in the community, because a lot of the stuff that happens is not just in the session, but it's prior to the session, during the session, and there are relationships that I think are key to our success that we just don't have.
Thank you for that, Trustee Brooks. Anything else, colleagues?
Go.
Trustee
Well, it's
Bustamante?
your, I think
Oh.
it was your, I thank you, Madam President. I think it was your idea, Trustee Zamora, about teaching us how to effectively use social media to communicate as a team our efforts and our moving forward. And so I think it was your idea. I thought you were going to say it, but.
I was collecting my thoughts because I had a few
Okay.
things in my mind. One of them being just because we are the newer members and we're very grateful for, all the team that did the trainings, the week. It was very intense and very time consuming, but it was very fruitful. And I enjoyed actually having it with Trustee Bustamante Adams because we were able to come together, after every session and be like, well, what did you collect from this and what did I collect from this, and come together as a team to discuss it and make sure we're on the same page about stuff. But I would love to see it more of it lower, almost like all of our members if possible. And I know that's time consuming, but at least we can say, we were all at this training, even this past weekend, with NASB. That was such a great training. And, I really wish other of my colleagues were there just to be able to, see and understand, and we can all just be on the same page so we can all hold each other accountable, I guess, more so than anything about what we've learned together. And then if there is miscommunication in some way, then we can come together and say, well, this is what I took from this and this is what I took from that. And what was it? And reviewing.
That's great. Thank you for those insights. There's a lot of room for us to build protocols as a group and training, as evidenced in the most recent activities that have taken place. I mean, there's opportunities for us to streamline that. The challenges that none of this has really been documented before, and we are having to build protocols from scratch, right? So this feedback is really helpful and important so that every member feels they have the tools to be successful in this role, and not just our board. I'm looking at future boards so that they don't have to have these conversations and can really focus on, ensuring that we are meeting our goals. So thank you, and yes, kudos to colleagues who had the availability to attend the Fallon training by the NASB. It was extraordinary training. We have, and that's the other part that I'm working on to make sure that colleagues in advance of the trainings have these dates locked into their calendar, right? Whenever possible, if your schedule allows, that you are able to. So again, something that hasn't been done before, but I'm committed to making sure that we communicate as a group and have those dates updated so that there is as much attendance as possible. Okay, great. Thank you, colleagues. I don't see any other hands or questions, and we're going to move on to great work, great discussion. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 3.01. This is the public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. Before I move forward, Trustee Brooks, are you still going to, excuse me, I'm so used to.
You need to use like a phone timer.
Oh.
Yes, allow us one moment before we continue on to this item.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah?
Yes.
I believe in you. You can do it.
You can do it. Let's do it. I would get lost at like 40. 30. Okay. All right, everyone. Moving on to item 3.01. Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Before I fully open this item, I want to make sure that anybody in the audience who has not submitted their yellow cards, please do so now. Amelia? Okay, no?
Yeah, I was.
All right. Amelia is like not interested in anything.
Want to say something for the record?
No,
All right,
she's good. She's good.
thought I'd ask.
You know? Great. All right. There's no, Cindy, I just want to confirm that there was no other individuals signed up in advance. Great. Danielle Ford?
Thank you. There are so many things to say, but I only have 2 minutes. So while I do have many concerns with hiring AJ Crabbill as board consultant, I'm going to save them from a new podcast about the corruption in CCSD, which launches at the end of the month. And instead, I'm going to share some background about the most urgent item facing the board at the moment. For the past 3 years, Superintendent Jara has pulled every possible trick to try to get his contract extended through June 2023. In early 2021, when his contract was set to expire, he claimed that his contract had already been extended through June 2023. That interpretation was proven to be incorrect, and he wasted months of the board's time and legal fees. Late in 2021, when he was terminated by the board, he threatened to sue the trustees unless we settled with him to extend his contract through June 2023. In 2022, during mediation, he once again attempted to have his contract renewed through June 2023. In 2022, in a split vote led by Trustee Brooks and Garcia Morales, he was given a contract extension through 2025 and a raise, making his salary over $400,000, with the terms that if he's ever terminated for convenience, he will receive the remainder of his contract, which comes to over $1 million. Now, what possibility could Jara have for being maniacally obsessed with staying employed through June 2023? That's right, it's when his PERS kicks in, which will entitle him to a retirement package of $300,000 per year. Now, here we are, May 2023, 1 month before Jara hits the Nevada taxpayer jackpot. And what else is happening? CCEA, led by Jara's buddy John Villarita, is publicly campaigning to tell Trustee Brooks and Garcia Morales, who are both up for re-election next year, to terminate Jara. CCEA's past Strategic Horizons funded both of their campaigns. Still trying to connect the dots, it's obvious Jara does not want to be superintendent anymore. It's obvious that John Villarita is using his influence through CCEA to control the narrative and manipulate the public into thinking that it will be because of their advocacy in convincing these two to fire him. The intent is to give them credit with listening to the community so they win re-election next year. The truth is these four are conspiring to deceive constituents and set up Jara to leave with millions of Nevada taxpayer dollars in his pocket through PERS and his employment contract payout. If the board really cares about being good stewards of public funds, you will immediately hire a private employment firm on retainer. And if not, and if what I just laid out actually happens, please expect lawsuits and investigations to rain down like hellfire at the federal level, directed at two of you. Thank you.
Carla Colsa, followed by Anna Binder.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Carlana Colseth. I come to you speaking from a teacher in this district as well as a constituent. What I just saw today, even before we started, is disgusting. Per your own bylaws, you're supposed to provide reference materials 8 days before a meeting, not a work session, not school board meeting, a meeting. We have no reference materials. I have to sit here and look this way and cram my neck to see what's going on. And I can't even follow along because the papers that you so conveniently have in your computer is there for you and not for the rest of us, including those that are sitting on these tables with you. As a teacher, if we're going to push Superintendent Jara to focus on student needs and outcomes, we need to face the reality that right now our students are not okay. I've continually come to this board and said this for all of us. We need to help our students. Summer acceleration, credit retrieval, RTI, interventions, remediations, those are great. But if we're not getting to the root of the problem as to why students are coming into our schools not ready to learn, it's not going to help him. It's not going to help us. At the state legislative session right now, they are talking about taking away student learning goals and student learning outcomes because those are put on teachers and they reflect the things that teachers do not have control over. So what we're saying right now as a district is that we're going to hold Superintendent Jara accountable for student outcomes, but teachers have the same thing. And every time that I've gone over an SLG or SLO with my administrators, it's always looking at what I couldn't do that was out of my control. So if it's not going to work at the teacher level, it's not going to work at the superintendent level. Also, I would like to remind you guys, us veteran teachers, we're overworked. We are not okay. We have people, adults that teach our children that are not okay. And you're expecting them to go into the buildings and make the students okay. Make it make sense. Thank you.
Anna Binder?
Anna Binder, long time no see. Hope everybody's doing good. Just because I haven't been here obviously doesn't mean I haven't been watching. And I'm going to echo what Danielle said. I know I told you guys at the beginning of 2022, that the changes that our district needed would never come from this board. And it is very, very clear it will never come as long as this board sits. So since 2022, not just myself, but many other people in the community have been investing so much time in federal complaints and sending things to the proper authorities who will come down. And just because they're not knocking at your door right now does not mean that they're not calling us. We're not having meetings and we're not exchanging emails or information. You guys are sloppy. You're not even trying to cover your tracks. And I made a mistake of filing something that they told me now is confidential, and I'll never make that mistake again. So with the rest of some other filings, they're not going to go to the state. I just thought, hey, you know what? This is pretty obvious. And well, now I can't talk about it, at least for a little while. But people are listening. People are frustrated. And then you continuously use the word community engagement, where you have shut our faces off, removed us from being able to give public comment. Sometimes it sounds like you want to make a vote or should make a vote on something, but oh, oops, we didn't make it for action. So we're not going to vote, so you can't say anything. But then here, let's meet tonight, and we're going to shove a piece of crud like AJ Craybill down this community's throat. Seriously. And you want to talk about lobbying? I've obviously never had any training, but I've spent more time in the last couple of years with the legislature than anybody sitting at this table. And wow, I don't know why no one in this community trusts Clark County School District. Why? You know, I sent an email, Trustee Williams, yesterday. I've been working with a family out at Cram, and you might have seen them on the media. The deaf daughter has been getting sexually abused by other boys in her IEP class. We got all the IEP stuff settled down, and at the end of a meeting about a month ago, with a proper ASL interpreter, we were able to get out of her that it wasn't just this one incident. So I called Clark County School District Police Department to come while the family was there, the interpreter was there, and I was there to file another police report. Do you think they showed up? No. Guess what? They said, oh, we need time to get a CDI ASL interpreter and a legal Spanish interpreter. To this day, that report has not been filed. To this day, that little girl tried to kill herself yesterday on school campus.
All right, colleagues, we're going to move on to item 4, upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees, Thursday, May 11th at 5 p.m. Is that right? May 11th. Cindy, may I ask, is that back at Greer, May 11th? Yes. Okay, great. Grateful for the temporary location that we have here, but I'm excited to go back to our building Greer. All right, colleagues, at this time, I'm moving on to item 5, motion to adjourn. And I'll jump at once. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. This time I motion to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. We have a second by Trustee Zamora. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Zamora. Please cast your vote. Okay. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. The time is 5:12. Thank you very much.